Hello, welcome to Nashville Savvy. I'm your host, Megan Lee Petidlik, and welcome to our new time. We're here on a Monday. I know that Mondays aren't the best, but we want to start your week out right, getting you ahead of what's going to be coming down this week as far as the politics, the legislation, the policy. But also, once we get rolling on every Monday, we'll also do a recap of all of the stuff that happened in the previous week, including some of the stuff that happens over the weekend that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So I'm excited to be here with you guys on a Monday. I'm glad to start your week out right. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to pull up a lovely tweet that was posted about Justin Jones. So it's really small, actually. I can't even read that. So hold on. So the tweet that was sent out was put out because Justin Jones hasn't been attending some of his committee meetings. This is coming after House Speaker Cameron Sexton was sued by Justin Jones because of his illegal and unconstitutional actions to silence his voice and the voice of other Tennessee legislators last year, but then misses meetings for 3 weeks in a row while he's working up on the Hill. So we could take that down. It's just another long list of the hypocrisy that comes from Justin Jones. And we're going to really expand on that once we get to the end of this program. But for now, I just want to jump right into what we saw over the weekend as far as what's going on here in Nashville. We saw a very spicy Nashville Nest meeting on Saturday. So Nashville Nest is this initiative. It's something that was put together, basically spearheaded by council member at large, Quinn Evans Siegel, where it would be rewriting a bunch of the zoning code so that it would introduce ways to take care of this affordable housing crisis for middle income families, according to Evans Siegel. Now, all these zoning stipulations increase things like zoning for duplexes up to like not just duplexes, but like triplexes and subplex. I don't even know how many places, how many plexes there are, but as well as making it so that zoning areas can be smaller for single households, that you could have multiple families, multifamily units within a single family unit, all this type of stuff to encourage density and affordability. And it felt like it was kind of ramrodded through. She introduced this on January 31st without really talking much with the rest of her council members. You could see it on the floor during discussions last meeting, which was like a few weeks ago now, when other council members are getting bombarded by their own constituents. Now, Quinn Evans Siegel is an at-large council member, so all the Nashvillians are her constituents. But these council members were blindsided by this legislation, blindsided by the backlash of their own constituents, and were very upset at this introduction. She deferred most of the legislation, not all of it, and we're going to get to that. But this weekend, and she started to do these community meetings this weekend, it came to a head during the community meeting at Belmont University, where they held an overflowing meeting to the point of it went to at capacity. They barred people from going inside because they had met, fire code. And so people were waiting, almost 100 people are waiting outside, very upset, wanting their questions answered. And when I say, and everybody's weighing in on this, and it's been crazy on the internet ever since. Of course, it's not just what happens on Twitter. I know that people think that everything happens on Twitter, but that's not true. People email, people send chain emails, or on Facebook. It really depends on what generation we're talking about, who's talking about this. But the backlash to this has met with some contentions within the local media and other people who are like the new YIMBYs, yes, in my backyard, as opposed to the NIMBYs, not in my backyard people. So for one, former council member Emily Evans was calling out the degrading pushback against old NIMBYs that was expressed by some of these new transit people, new density people, new Nashville people who just say that they're old and they only are thinking about themselves and whatever, and very, very degrading when they're talking about those constituents online. We've also seen people who are negotiating who exactly are the taxpayers, saying that if you live in the city, you pay taxes on groceries, you pay taxes on sales. This is because during the meeting, one of the things that Quinn Evans Siegel said was, I work for the city of Nashville, to which somebody in the audience audibly shouted, you work for the taxpayers, which is just tells you exactly where we're at in this discussion and how the paths are not running parallel at this point. They're definitely crossing and they're hitting some nerves on the local level. We've also seen some conversation from Carol Swain, Dr. Carol Swain, who used to be a law professor, who is a political scientist, who also ran for mayor at one point. She put her 2 cents in and published some of what Ray Cohane, a local citizen, has posted about why you shouldn't support this zoning legislation. So she kind of put that out there. She has a wider audience. So that absolutely, she let people know about these meetings. And obviously we saw people showing up. And then lastly, during the meeting, Quinn Evans Siegel explained that it's actually single family homes that are the biggest drain on the budget. This is her exact quote. We know, and we've known as long as we've had cities, that single family homes don't pay for themselves. Single family homes are frankly the single biggest drain on our budget. And so this just shows you the difference between the two different sides of this conversation, which is, are you going to listen to people who have been here, who do own their property, whose property's values and their neighborhoods depend on these types of zoning changes? Are you going to take what they say? Are you going to weigh it in and factor it into this? Or are you just going to try to ramrod this zoning legislation down everybody's throats? It definitely seems like Evan Siegel is meeting with contention, not only from her fellow council members, but from constituents. We're going to hear more about this. We're going to see more about this. We will hear more about most of the legislation in April. For now, there are 2 more open public meetings scheduled. There might be more before April if you want to go and attend them. Of course, we will be seeing one bill, which I will talk about once we get into the Metro rundown. But first, I also want to say something about claims of democracy. So we did also see during that meeting, we also saw some people tweet afterwards that, hey, there were other council members there and nobody kind of stood up for Quinn Evans Siegel. Nobody kind of calmed their constituents down and how that's such in bad faith and all these claims about the democratic process and all this stuff. I just want to remind people that this council immediately reinstated Justin Jones after he purposefully led an entire protest to disrupt fellow legislatures at the state legislature. So talking about not letting, don't let your constituents interrupt other fellow council members. This council has writ large supported this type of behavior in the past. And these council members who were just in attendance, they're not in charge. They weren't leading a protest against these other council members. They were just there and apparently weren't doing enough to, keep the peace amongst these constituents who were voicing their opinion and wanted their questions answered during Saturday's meeting. Okay, we're going to move on to the state legislature. So during General Assembly this week, we see a couple things coming down the pipes as far as in the Higher Education Subcommittee in the House. I just want to point out, this isn't a giant, writ large rundown of all the legislation. There's so much more, but I want to give you a taste of what they're talking about this week. So if you're paying attention and you care about something, you can let your legislators know. In the Education Subcommittee, we're seeing a couple things about discriminatory practices, specifically when they have to do with higher education institutes. So there are 2 bills that I was looking at. One that prohibits certain institutions or higher education from defining discriminatory practices in their anti-discrimination policies in a manner that's inconsistent with the definitions of discriminatory practices in law. That is HB 1660. SB 2351, if you want to go look at it. A DEI bill that I'm looking at too that has to do with discrimination, because we're seeing how DEI kind of flips discrimination on its head, establishes that various prohibitions and requirements for public institutions or higher education regarding diversity, equity, inclusion are not actually discriminatory towards certain subgroups of people. So that is HB 1948 and SB 2350. If you want to look at those, we've been talking a lot about DEI. We've seen it coming through our Metro Arts Commission. We've seen it being implemented in obviously colleges and schools across the country. So those are 2 bills that if you're interested in that type of stuff, I would keep my eye on it and let your legislators know that you either support or do not support that legislation. lastly, just shortly, I want to point out the autopsy bill, the recurring autopsy bill that has come back from special session. So during special session, this was brought forward by it was kind of related to the Covenant parents, where they were concerned about the autopsy reports of their children being leaked by the media, and they wanted this autopsy bill passed to prevent that. Now, on the regular web, all of those autopsy reports of those children have not been leaked, despite the fact that this bill did not pass. But this autopsy bill has been brought back forward, and it would have to do with county medical examiners and autopsy reports involving minors whose manner of death is listed as homicide are not public documents. As of right now, they are. Those county medical examiner and autopsy reports are. And so this would authorize that reports would be released only if a minor's parent or legal guardian consents to the report's release, and the legal guardian or parent are not suspect in the circumstances of the minor's death. And so this is basically a protection mechanism, though we've seen some pushback on it, only for unintended consequences. Absolutely nobody wants people to capitalize off of the autopsies of the minors who were killed in these tragic circumstances, regardless of what the circumstances are. So I did speak last week with a woman named Deborah Fisher of the Tennessee Coalition for Open Government, who also testified against the passage of this bill during the special session. Not that she was against the entire idea of the bill, but just wanted some amendment added to it to make sure to protect against some unintended consequences. One of them being, she mentioned to me, look at the fact that, when we talk about who is the legal guardian, if you have kids who are in the foster system, then the state becomes the legal guardian of these children. And if we can't have transparency because the state is not going to allow the release of any type of autopsy, how do we have any checks and balances? Who's going to be the watchdog, except for the internal affairs of all of these, the departments that are in charge of this? This could snowball. Also, journalists have spoken out against this, including Phil Williams, who has cited that in 2 cases, he's used autopsy reports to successfully investigate deaths of children, and he discovered that they were killed either by their parents or their parents' partners. If this does pass, then it would limit some of these watchdog investigative looks into some of these autopsy reports. Again, it doesn't mean that this bill can't pass it's just people are calling for it to have some adjustments to make sure that it doesn't have unintended consequences. That's HB 1695 and SB 2020 if you want to look it up. That's going to be on second reading in the House this week. So make sure you watch this bill because it got through all the committees and it's still going all the way through, guys. So if you want to look into it, please do. All right, we're going to get into Metro, and I'm moving right along. So this week, we actually have a weird Metro meeting because it's not on Tuesday, it's on Thursday. I'm still trying to figure out if this is correct or if I'm just losing it and I don't realize why it's on Thursday. I don't know why it's on Thursday, but this week it's on Thursday. Somebody tell me why. I don't know why, and I haven't had the time to figure it out yet. But we're going to see a lot of Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission board members instated. So this is a board that was passed in August. The group will be working alongside Vision Zero, which we keep hearing about, to aim for 0 pedestrian deaths in Nashville. So you're going to see, I think it's 5 people are going to be appointed. There are a couple other appointees for different commissions and boards this week as well. Yes, TPAC is moving to the East Bank. We have a resolution 270, which agrees for the multi-use performance space to find its way onto the new East Bank property that's owned by Metro government. So that's just interesting because things are really moving forward with the East Bank development. We're seeing that we're going to do demolition of the old stadium. We're going to build up the new one. We're going to build up all the areas around it. And this is a multi-year project. So yes, TPAC will be moving across the river. Good to note. We also see some allocation of ARPA funding. Now, that's the American Rescue Plan Act funds that were given after COVID to kind of revitalize America. Now, what we see getting appropriated I think it's basically from funding that was set aside early on when we were kind of making sure to get our hands as much of the ARP money as possible. That's what the Metro government's job really is, to kind of run after all that funding and see if they can't apply any of that funding to things of use in our government. This week, we're going to see an appropriation of $1,630,000 of ARP funds to extend the provision of critical immigration legal services in Davidson County. So that's one allocation of this ARPA money. That's Resolution 271. We're also going to see $225,000 going towards small business owners of ARPA funding. The interesting thing about this is that $75,000 of that is just going to minority-owned businesses specifically in Davidson. The rest of it could go to anybody who owns a small business, but $75,000 has been set aside for only minority-owned businesses. That's Resolution 272 and 273. We are seeing a resolution that's going to push back on this NEST initiative, which is really interesting because obviously people felt blindsided. Council members felt blindsided by Quinn Evans Siegel with all these NEST initiatives. So we're seeing a resolution that's been put forward. I will let you know who put it forward, but it's RS 288. It requests that the planning department and all these other codes and safety department, historic preservation offices, Metro Water Services, the Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, they're asking them to do technical studies determined by the departments to provide a comprehensive analysis of recommended changes to the Metropolitan Code of Law that would increase allowable density in Nashville and Davidson County and make recommendations regarding the land use policy, which incorporates affordable and workforce housing strategies that can be supported by existing planning structures. So they just want these actual metro entities to look at these density changes and see what works, what doesn't work, what's going to mess up things, what's going to be useful. They want an actual analysis by these departments. They want their feedback. This was put forward by Gamble, Johnston, Druffel, Wiener, Spain, Nash, Stiles, Allen, Hancock, Webb, and Ellis. Again, this is RS 288. I encourage you to go look at it. It seems like a pushback against this abrupt NEST zoning change initiative and just wants there to be some more comprehensive look into these density changes when it comes to zoning. Very interesting bill, very interesting coalitions that are popping up in reaction to these zoning bills. If you think that NEST bills aren't on the calendar, you are wrong. Yes, most of them were pushed off until April, but there is one that's on the calendar for this week. It's BL 188, and it would be regulations to eliminate minimum lot areas for multi-house, mobile homes, and non-residential use in residential multifamily zoning districts. So this is one of those things that would make lot size smaller, allow more people to use these spaces that are out there. And basically, that's my wrap up for our preview this week. We're going to see what they actually do on Thursday. I will be watching you so that you don't have to, though I encourage you to watch, but we'll let you know everything that went down. Next, we're going to get into our local corner. Local corner. All right, I guess I'm going to pull up this website, Frankie's Nashville. If you like Italian food, I know Coco's is great. But if you're over here on the east side like I am and don't want to go all the way to the west end, Frankie's is a must. You have to head out to this place. They make their own pasta. They also have a store across the street where they sell pasta and olives and olive oil and all sorts of stuff. It is a delight, and I don't think that many people know about it yet. They just started to stay open a little bit later on weekends and stuff like that. They have a cute little bar. There are no televisions in here, guys. It is kind of this family eating vibe in this vast open space. Of course, if I'm going to just eat by myself, which I do often, I'll sit up at they have a cute little, it doesn't feel like a bar. It feels like a little, a cozy little cove, like a restaurant bar. It's not like the type of bar that you just go hang out at. I will say a little trade secret. They have really wonderful prices on their bourbon and their whiskey. I'm sure that the prices even carry over to some of their other things. But I was talking to a woman who works for a 5-star restaurant who was sitting there waiting for her pizza next door to finish. And she was looking at the prices and she was like, is this wrong? Because she sells them, some of the bourbons there, she sells for twice the amount downtown. So worth trying out. I can attest to their meatballs and linguine. That is all I've tried, and I've tried it twice because I liked it so much the first time. I didn't change my order the second time I went, but definitely check this place out. It is near the railroad tracks, which is really kind of cool, except for the fact that those trains go by so often that you might have to wait for a train to go by when you try to get over there to Frankie's. But yeah, definitely check this place out. Delicious Italian food. And I have been waiting to find a good meatball for years. So that's my local corner. We're going to go right into Metro Mayhem.
Metro Mayhem.
All right, so we're bringing us full circle from where I'm meeting today because it's always about Justin Jones because he can't help himself. Now, had I known what was going to happen this weekend, I would have probably put up some of those videos from the meeting that happened about the Nest thing at Belmont University. If you want to watch that chaos, you could go on Twitter. I do have some videos up, but this is all about Justin Jones. It's actually about the two Justins. I want to show these two clips back to back. I will show one and then we'll talk about the other. This happened last week in an exchange between Justin Jones and Rep. Littleton when she was talking about a resolution to support Taiwan, and it's a renewal of a resolution that has been passed before in the past. So just watch how Justin Jones deals with this questioning, I guess, of Rep. Littleton right now.
Listen, what is the capital of Taiwan?
Charlie Littleton.
Taipei.
Representative Jones.
Thank you for phoning a friend. My last question is, what is the ruling party of Taiwan?
Charlie Littleton.
Mr. Speaker, communism from China.
Representative Jones.
That is incorrect. The ruling party of Taiwan is the Democratic Progressive Party. This is just trying to show us that if we're going to vote on international relations, we should have our facts correct. So that's incorrect, Representative Littleton. The ruling party of Taiwan is not communism. It is the Democratic Progressive Party. Let me share a few other facts about Taiwan. In 1995, Taiwan nationalized its healthcare system, making it so that it is a healthcare system characterized by good, accessible, comprehensive coverage for all of its population. It also has some of the most restrictive gun laws. In December 2023, Taiwan expanded its gun control to prohibit the use of firearms in the public. So thank you for this resolution. Good try with the facts about what Taiwan is, but let's know if we're going to try and engage in international relations, let's have our facts correct, body. And so again, I do support this legislation, but I support it for different reasons than you offering it. Thank you.
Charlie Littleton.
Thank you for your support.
Okay. So Jones is trying to call out Littleton and just everybody in general by doing this gotcha back and forth and giving this whole dissertation, and we shouldn't get involved in things that we don't understand. This is fresh coming from Justin Jones, who literally put forward a sandhill crane bill that he knew nothing about preservation, the reservation set aside for the sandhill crane. He literally can't get anything past it. It's just how he interacts. He then wonders why people do not want to work with him. Let's look at this compared to how Justin Pearson actually probed a different representative about an EV bill. I just want you to look at the difference between these two guys.
Pearson.
Okay, I'm being convinced. I just want to make sure that I understand this correctly. In 2007, certain targets were set aside for us to reach green efficiency for our vehicles. We have accomplished that goal according to what you have mentioned now. And so the reporting that is done for the last 10 years has just restated we met the goals that we set in 2007. Is that correct?
Representative Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes.
Representative Pearson.
And the second part of this legislation, nor in any intention, is to prevent our departments from doing the work of increasing the amount of fuel-efficient vehicles, increasing the amount of green vehicles that are part of our fleet as we continue to deal with environmental and climate issues. Is that correct?
Representative Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you so much for being willing to answer the questions, and I will support this legislation.
Okay, so here's Pearson doing his job. His constituents care about these environmental initiatives. He saw this bill. He was worried about it. He thought it was preventing fleets of service vehicles, from trying to better their fuel efficiency and be more eco-friendly and stuff like that. That's not what this bill was about at all. So when he is peppering the sponsor with questions, he is trying to clarify, understand, and once he realizes that, hey, actually, this just what the bill does is prevents taxpayer dollars being spent to redo another study that they've already done. We've already done it. So to just have us do it again would basically just make us pay for something that we already know. And this bill was put forward to prevent that, to prevent the waste of taxpayer dollars. And so Pearson is like, okay, since I know that, I support the bill. What a difference. And I want to pull up, maybe Justin Jones, we could pull up this picture of him, needs to look in the mirror, because it sounds to me like the progressive rep who has complained because nobody will work with him, who purposefully disrupted business of the people with the floor-led protests, purposefully in order to get kicked out, according to other Democrat colleagues, who then raised over $1 million to campaign for funding, who's been named Harper's Bazaar Icon of the Year, one of them, interviewed on CNN, on other national outlets, who's been accused of charging people to take pictures with him, who's thrown traffic cones at a truck driver during a protest, who is called Rep Kumar. If you remember this exchange last year, he called him a brown face and said he put a brown face on white supremacy during one of the actual meetings, like their committee meetings. This guy is now claiming victim. It's everybody else's fault except for his. We're going to close out this Metro Mayhem with a wonderful out video presented by Justin Jones. Until next week, I will see you guys. We're actually going to bump this show to 1 o'clock next week. So we're going to give ourselves a little bit more time on Monday to get things rocking and rolling. But until then, stay informed.
Every day we go to the Capitol, it's like heading to a battlefield. You have to brace yourself and just think, what group are they going to attack today? Is it going to be the LGBTQ community? Is it going to be people who are black and brown? Is it going to be women? Is it going to be those who are poor or our students? And so it's just always headed to work and just bracing for the madness of the day. This week on the House floor, my Republican colleagues passed laws banning pride flags from public schools, targeting the LGBTQ community, as well as making so that expelled members cannot return back to legislature. When I tried to raise my hand and speak up against these extreme bills, the speaker chose not to call on me. Even though my hand remained up for over 2 hours seeking to be recognized, they continually just tried to call the question and force a vote without allowing proper discussion and deliberation and debate. That's what we're seeing every day in the Tennessee Capitol. When they're not trying to expel us or rule us out of order, the speaker decides just not to call on you, and therefore silences the voices of the over 70,000 people who sent me up there to be their voice and represent them in District 52. This is what we're dealing with every day in this chamber. We have a speaker who sits up there and abuses his gavel and has turned this place that should be the people's house into his private palace and country club. And nothing is being passed to better the lives of Tennesseans. Nothing is being passed here to better the lives of our constituents. And it's shameful. We can be a different type of community, that we can be a community that cares for our neighbors, cares for the vulnerable, that we can pass laws here that better people's lives. And I think that we have to be serious that if we don't address it here in chambers like this, if we don't stop this cancer of authoritarianism, of white supremacy, then it's going to spread across our nation. And that this very chamber is a front line of democracy. This is a place where we must stand up and be unintimidated to speak truth to power and speak truth to insanity is really what's happening.